Hello, everybody. This is 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝𝙚. I am a mountain guide with Mountain Skills Academy and Adventures. And tonight we are going to talk about the Spearhead. This is Spearhead Stoke Week. And Spearhead Stoke Week is all about celebrating the Spearhead Traverse, which is kind of the epicenter of Whistler here, of why Whistler is even here. It's probably the best, easiest backcountry access, perhaps in North America, given, when the Whistler Blackcomb lists are running anyways. And it's just epic terrain, big fat snowpack, amazing lines, and good times. And we want to celebrate this range for many reasons. And tonight we've assembled a panel of experts to provide advice, to answer questions, and, get the Stoke going. And our goal is to, grow this event in the years to come. And we want to advocate for the Spearhead, for its access, for preserving, our winters. We are actually going to be using this as a fundraiser for half and half for POW and for the Spearhead huts. There's 2 new huts that are, going to be built on a Spearhead. And when those are built, it'll make a nice hut-to-hut traverse. And so any proceeds from the sales of Matt's amazing book, any courses that you guys are booking with MSAA for this week, and as well, any private donations, if you want to just go ahead and donate, we'll be splitting the funds, like I said, between the Spearhead Huts Committee and POW. So that is it. And without further ado, I'm going to get started here, and I'll introduce our first guest. Of our guests tonight, we have Matt Gunn. We'll have myself. Matt's going to talk a little bit about the Spearhead and his amazing new guidebook. There'll be myself. I'm going to talk about light and fast techniques, some advice there about, keeping it light on a traverse. With Eric Visso, the photographic guide, memory mountain guide there, guide who knows like every little feature like the back of his hand. He'll give you some good advice about the snowpack and some cruxes and things like that. And then we have Callum Pettit, and he's going to talk about his stoke for the Spearhead and his journey towards becoming a pro skier. So let me introduce Matt, first of all, you guys. So Matt's a very humble guy, but he's a very respected local outdoor enthusiast. He really gets after it, and he does so in a big way. And on top of that, he really gives back to our mountain community. He shares many trip details on his blog and website, images, and Matt has taken the time to write some amazing guidebooks, which are very important resources for the Scrambles guidebook, for Scrambles. He also is one of the moderators, and he's the founder of Coast, the Facebook page, very well read page for getting your backcountry conditions, called South Coast Backcountry. If you're not a member, check it out on Facebook. And he just came out with an amazing new book that's called the Spearhead Backcountry Atlas. So without further ado, welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Eric. I've got a slideshow here. I'm just going to talk about some of my favorite places in the Spearhead. So I'm just going to share the screen and let me know. Are you guys seeing my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, great. So I just wanted to really quickly start off by, well, first off, my name's Matt Gunn. I live in Squamish with my family, and I've been kind of in and around the coast range for Coast Mountains for about 20 years, and really they have quite a special place in my heart. And the Spearhead is definitely one of those locations that really is just such a fantastic asset that we have for mountain activities. And yeah, just to start off, I thought I'd talk a little bit about some of the aspects of the Spearhead Range that I think make it really quite special. First off, it's really quite an amazing piece of terrain. There's a great collection of peaks and glaciers that are linked in a nice horseshoe, which make it a really great route for traveling through and linking up, a number of different objectives. It's got some fantastic scenery. It's surrounded by Garibaldi Park, which is one of our larger provincial parks in the province, and one of our older ones. And there's a ton of glaciated peaks in that park, so it makes for great visuals whenever you're out touring in the area. just as with much of the coast mountains, we've got a great snowpack. It's deep, it's often stable. It's not always stable. So it's, I always want to be careful about saying that because while it is more stable than some places in the province, we certainly can have periods of bad stability, certainly as we saw this year. But I do like the fact that it, as a maritime snowpack, tends to be a bit more stable. And then, one of the real keys I'd say about this Spearhead is that we've got great access. I think it's one of the things that makes it really fantastic for ski touring. There's a ton of great mountains in the South Coast around, Vancouver, Squamish, Whistler, but they're not particularly easy to get to. We have low roads and a lot of tree line, and having the lift system in the Spearhead to get you up into the mountains quickly and easily is just an incredible resource. It makes for such pleasant days of skiing. And often because you can get up high quickly, you can have times when it's still somewhat warm and raining in lower areas of the mountains, but you can still get up high above the rain without having to slog up through the rain. And that makes it kind of a bit more flexible area. And also in years when we have bad snow years down low, often above 2,000 meters on Blackcomb, you can have a ton of snow and still get out for a reasonable day tour and make the most of your days out. And also combined with the getting to the mountains, another piece that I really love about the Spearhead is it's easy to get out of the Spearhead. When you're going into some of our great areas, like, the peaks around Garibaldi Park around Garibaldi Lake or, Wedgemount, you can go up there, get up early, get into the mountains, have a big day of skiing, but then you've got quite a slog to get home, whether it's down the Wedgemount Trail or down the Rebel Creek Trail. And that can be quite pounding at the end of a long day. And man, I tell you, I appreciate so much at the end of the day in either whether you're in the musical bumps or in the Blackcomb Backcountry, getting on Singing Pass or Sunset Boulevard and just zooming downhill back to your car in a short amount of time. So the access really, it's part of it is getting home on that infrastructure, the trails and the ski runs. So another great thing about the Spearhead. And then another thing that I really like, and I think some people see it as a bit of a downside to the Spearhead, but I think of the Spearhead as quite a social place to tour. We've got all these places like, Glacier Lodge and Glacier Chair, the Showcase T-Bar, the Backcountry Gate, East Call, all these different locations where if you're headed out for a day of skiing, everybody kind of gets funneled through a few of these locations. And I think some people see this as a downside, like you get a bit of that stress of like, oh, we got to race out to get to these places. But I actually really like it. Like I find either you're going to meet somebody that or a friend you haven't seen in a while, get a chit chat, maybe you meet somebody new. So I kind of like that funnel effect that we have. And then once you get past the funnel, there's lots of places to go and you can get away from the crowds. But I do like that social element of skiing in the Spearhead, and I think that's quite a special little piece of it too. And then, finally, and most importantly, there's a ton of fantastic ski terrain in the Spearhead Backcountry. Lots of variety, enough to satisfy years of ambition in like every condition and season. And so in this talk, I just want to give a kind of quick overview of a couple of my favorite places in the Spearhead area. So there really are so many. So this is just like skimming the surface of a few of the great spots. But one of them I want to start out talking about is Phalanx. It's a peak that has some amazing north aspect terrain, but it's fairly close to the resort boundary. So it makes a very reasonable day trip, but it's a bit far enough away that it escapes the kind of like real pressure that some of the close to hit runs get, like out of the Blackcomb Gate, places like Usumi and Corona and DOA, they just like, people are just flooding through those areas. And it's a bit of a walk to get to Phalanx. And so it trims out quite a chunk of the crowd and makes it a great place to go. And I think one of the reasons, one is that it's a little bit further to get to, but also a lot of the things that people go to from the Blackcomb Backcountry Gate are really visible. Like Usumi and Corona, you see those from the resort. DOA, you see that from the resort. You get up to East Call and you can see Decker across the area, across the Circle Lake area. So they're really visible and it's like enticing to go to there. But the good skiing on Phalanx is hidden from people who are at the resort. It's north facing, so you don't see it a lot. And so I think it's a little less prominent in people's minds, and so it doesn't get as much traffic. So just as a little orientation to where Phalanx is, on this map here, you can see where the Blackcomb and Whistler ski resorts are, and the Spearhead, which is kind of that U-shaped range that's wrapping around. And Phalanx is not far from Blackcomb Resort, circled in red there at the top of the screen. So I got a couple pictures just to show the access. You start off taking the Showcase T-bar up. on the right side of the screen there and do the big kind of slide across the Blackcomb Glacier, then do a climb up to Spearhead Col, which isn't too bad. It's like less than 200-meter climb. And then you're skiing. You can, come down a couple different ways onto the Spearhead Glacier and get a nice run down the glacier, then climb up onto the flank of Phalanx and head for the Stairmaster Couloir. There are a couple different ways to get there, but the Stairmaster Couloir is kind of one of the more common ones. And it actually adds a nice element to the tour out there. You do a kind of long, steep boot pack. And, those boot packs, it's quite aesthetic. It feels kind of like a bit hardcore when you've got your skis on your backpack and you're like pounding up the route up into the summit. So it's got that kind of aesthetic that makes it quite enjoyable. And then when you get to the top, you get access to this great amount of terrain. Right on the northeast side, there's the Spearhucker area, which has got some really long runs, like some of the longer runs down off the summit, across kind of a easy glacier, and then way down to a lower valley. And then on the north flank, there's a nice, the glacier kind of ends up high, but there's still a whole bunch of steep north-facing terrain that holds the snow really well, and it's quite popular with heli skiers, but lots of room in there for getting turns. And like just not the busiest area because it is a little bit further out. And another nice thing about Phalanx is because it's fairly close to the resort, if you look on the right side of the screen there, that is the Glacier Road exit from Blackcomb Glacier. And so there's a bench you can follow around, which takes a little bit of time to get around, but you can kind of curve around to these treed chutes, the poop chutes that lead back down into the resort, and it makes a fairly reasonable exit. So you can do a fairly nice day there, get away from the crowds and get some decent skiing in. Next, I want to talk about another aspect of the Spearhead that I think is really fantastic. We've got some big peaks with pretty fantastic descents on them. And two of them that are the back end are 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝𝙚 and Fitzsimmons. You can kind of see them from a bunch of different areas of the range, and they're really enticing. They're big dramatic lines. They're kind of gems of the range for descents. And I had a couple different experiences here, and I thought I'd highlight them because it kind of highlights the difference that you can experience heading out with risk-taking and decision-making. But first, just to give a sense of where those are, they're way at the back end there. You can see the red circle on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Those are the two peaks with they're fairly big descents on the north side. And because they're farther away there, it's really like a big day. You're kind of heading out, you're going to get one of those and you're going to get home, unless you're like a monster and you can do multiple. And people do that. But for the average people, if you're pretty strong and you could go for it, that's still a pretty big day to get back there. Or you might do it as a multi-day. You might go camp out somewhere and hit one of those runs. And if you're going for 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝, tends to be that it's easier to go from the Blackcomb side. And if you're going for Fitzsimmons, tends to be easier to go from the Whistler side. So my experience is there. My first time heading out to do one of them, I went for Fitzsimmons, and we got really lucky. We had great weather, a good crew, avalanche conditions were good. We skied out, got up to the summit. There's a nice little kind of first ski from a boot pack up to call, and then ski down a little hanging basin to a bench, and then you kind of traverse out into the face and drop down to the glacier. And there's a cliff down at the bottom, so you kind of want to head right. So it's got a little bit of exposure, and it's quite a long, sustained 50-degree face. So it's you definitely want to be there in good conditions. But we had the good conditions. It was a pleasant day, really great ski. Not much to be said other than just a fantastic trip. My experiences heading out to 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝 were quite different. And I tried a number of times. My first time heading out there, we were heading out on the Spearhead Traverse, and it, fairly quickly it was apparent there was a lot of wind. It was transporting a lot of snow, and kind of by the time we got, oh, that picture didn't come in correctly. By the time we got in out towards 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝, which is up on the right side of the screen there, we could see a lot of wind was being transported onto the face, and it's not something we wanted to go ski with a whole bunch of new load on it. So first time, just continued around the Spearhead. And, if you're continuing around the Spearhead, you still have a great day, right? Like if you end up doing the Spearhead as a day trip, still a fantastic outing. So it's not a big downside. The second time I headed out, the weather was more cooperative. We didn't have a lot of wind. And this is the face of 𝙎𝙤𝙧𝙝 that we were heading out to ski. So we headed out, we climbed up to the summit and then kind of boot packed down the ridge to the top of the face where we were going to do the descent. But after doing some assessment of the face on the top, we felt like it wasn't in the condition that we were comfortable with. And so we pulled the pin and headed out. And again, it's a long ways to go back there. Like that's a full day to get to the top of 𝙎𝙤𝙧𝙝. And so, it's always a real bummer, and especially if you put in that time and you got to that point, you're above the line, the ski line, like it's, it can be hard to choose not to make the call to go down. But because, we've got a family and want to come home, you got to make those calls. And so the second time we went out, we didn't ski it. But again, with the Spearhead Traverse as a plan B, it's really like still a fantastic day. So not a big loss. And the third time I went out to try it, we got out there, no problems with weather, no problems with wind. The stability seemed really great. So we got to the top of the face. But the one unfortunate thing that happened was that some clouds came in and kind of like made for flat lighting. And it's quite a long face and fairly steep. And so it'd be really nice to have fairly good visibility when you're skiing a run like that. And we kind of hung out at the top of the face waiting and hoping that the clouds would kind of move away and let the sun shine on the face. But you've only got so much time when you make a long trip to the back end of the Spearhead to do your run. And it just didn't happen that while we were waiting there, the sun came out. So we ended up kind of fumbling our way down in, flat lighting, which was okay, but, it just wasn't the kind of epic run we'd hoped for. And of course, like the classic, we got to the bottom, skied to the bottom of Fitz, and, within probably 10 minutes of getting our skins on and starting up the other side, the sun came out and the whole face was in beautiful sun. And anyway, whatever, it's a reason to go back and do it another time. And then the next thing I want to talk about was some of the chutes around Blackcomb. There's really, one of the great things about a place like the Spearhead is that there's a lot of intricacies in the routes that you can ski in the area. And as you get to know an area like this better and better, you can start making these link ups of great features and kind of combine different runs into great days. And so I wanted to highlight this one I had a couple of years ago with a bunch of friends. We had, skied the area lots and knew lots of little things that we enjoyed going and doing and made this great link up of chutes for the day. So I'll just show you what we did. We started out in the Blackcomb Glacier, cruised up over to the Spearhead Glacier and Shamshoots area, then worked our way over to Vista and then Chisel, which is on Decker, and then back to Phalanx and out back to the resort. And there's a whole bunch of these great little chutes that you can do, that you can line up as part of that trip. This is where all those peaks were basically, and just off the backside of Blackcomb, not very far away at any point. So the first chute we went up to hit was Shamshoot. There's 3 there, and they're nice steep runs, very very popular. And yeah, we had they're sun affected, so lots of times you don't get fresh powder, but we had some great skiing as we cruised down there. We then kind of cruised over to this Vista chute, which is at a short little chute, but it's got a nice little steep entrance and it's aesthetic. Nice views off towards Tremors. You're skiing down that run. Then we crossed over to Decker and climbed up on Decker and skied a run called Chisel Chute. It's quite a steep run with a dog leg at the bottom, and got it untouched, perfect conditions, great skiing all the way down that run. And fairly steep, so kind of a highlight run on that day. Then cruised up to the Spearhead Glacier and skied what arguably isn't really much of a chute, but Saucer Chute, at least that's its name, down to the Spearhead Glacier. Again, great conditions, hadn't been skied yet, so we had a great time there. Boot packed up the Stairmaster onto the Phalanx Glacier, which we talked about earlier, and skied this couloir at the north end of the east face, and fairly steep. Around 50 at the top. It was the only one of these chutes that I hadn't skied, and the conditions were terrible in that chute. It's got a lot of had a lot of crust on it, but because it was the only one I hadn't skied, it was actually probably the highlight for me. I like kind of checking out those corners that you haven't been to yet. So we skied that, and then cruised back up onto the Phalanx Glacier and skied Foon Alley, which is a nice little short steep shot, and then cruised down Poop Chutes, which again is arguably not really a chute, but makes for a nice descent. So we linked up a whole bunch of different features, brought us back to the Blackcomb resort, and cruised on home. And like to be able to do that in an area, like spend all day up above the Alpine, linking great features without like a big sufferfest to get up there or to get home, it really kind of highlights some of the kind of great attributes that this area has, and yeah, that I really appreciate. But yeah, that's coming out, the Poop Chutes back to the resort. And then that's the bulk of my presentation. I just wanted to kind of finish off really quickly saying I've really enjoyed exploring this area. And as Eric mentioned, I spent a bunch of time trying to take a bunch of the information that I've learned as I've skied around the area and create this set of maps and photos that highlight where the terrain is and how to use it. And so that's my Spearhead Backcountry Atlas. It came out this year, and I was pretty happy to get it out. And yeah, anyway, that's my speech. Yeah, lots of great places to go, and super excited to share some of these images with you. I hope you get a chance to get out there next year when it's open.
Well, Matt, I thank you so much for that. As usual, very humble. That Spearhead Atlas, you guys, you can get it here, and we'll donate 10% of the proceeds to split between the Spearhead Huts Society and POW. And this is a monumental work, you guys. And this is, I mean, it is the new Bible for anything Spearhead, obviously. And what I love about it, Matt, congratulations, because this is a guidebook that you've written like you're through experience. And that's the best kind of guidebooks there are, people who write, there's all kinds of people who write guidebooks. So my hats off to you, because you're an authentic, genuine guidebook writer and have become an authority through doing it. And that's awesome.
Thanks so much, Eric.
As a guide, this is myself as a professional, this is an amazing resource for me to look at with other guides in our daily meetings and everything in our operation. So yeah, hats off. And now's the best time to buy it today, guys, so that we can support Matt, but so you have this amazing resource, and at the same time be giving back to our community, to the Spearhead Huts, and to POW. We need to preserve our winters, as everybody knows, with climate change. And just either in the chat there, give us your email, and we'll take care of the rest. Okay, so I'm going to move on to, and Matt will be here to answer some questions a bit later there, if you guys have any questions. Like I said, he's definitely the authority on this. So our next guest here in the panel is Eric Visso. Let me introduce Eric. Eric, I think he may very well live on a spearhead in an ice cave somewhere. No, but guiding the spearhead, I mean, anytime I go on a spearhead, I can run into Eric Visso there guiding it. He's certainly worked for Mountain Skills Academy and other companies, other very reputable companies as well, having guided the spearhead many times. And one thing that's I always found unique, and that's why I wanted to invite Eric, is that he definitely has a photographic memory for terrain, for cruxes, for things like that. And Eric, of course, is also, one of the things I appreciate about Eric is his deep knowledge of all things, avalanche decision making wise. And so he's going to share with us some of his knowledge and some advice for the Spearhead this year, specific to this season. And so if you have any questions specifically about cruxes or, the conditions this year and all that, you can save those for Eric a bit later. Okay, Eric, why don't we leave the floor to you. Welcome, Eric Visso.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I want to talk to you about the Spearhead and the conditions right now this year, and you can think of other years, but before I think of doing the Spearhead, if you want to do the whole traverse, if you want to do not explore just the close backcountry, but also the further backcountry, you think of weather a little bit, you think of avalanche conditions, and this year, I think this time of the year, you'd be thinking of generally warm condition, sun-affected slopes, so you'd be worried a little bit more about any south aspect and southeast and even southwest by the end of the day. You should be really thinking of those particular slopes, and that's the type of thing you should be looking at. The next thing you should be thinking of is which route you're going to take, and for sure right now, this year you'd be thinking of going from the Whistler side to the Blockholm, because you can actually come up you can actually come up Singing Pass Trail. Does that make sense for most of you, since there's no access on the Blackcomb side? So I think what you should, probably the best way to do the trip would be in a 3-day version, to do the whole traverse. The first day would be to probably ascend to, actually what I'll do here, I'll actually share my screen and show you I'll show you my screen and I'll go. All right, so Spearhead Traverse, I would actually come up the Spearhead Traverse via Singing Pass Trail if that was you. Spend the first night. I think you guys all seeing my my screen there. I'd be spending my night at the old cabin site. That's probably the best way. It's actually allowed camping from bike parks, and that's where you should be camping. First night, I think that would be the best place. Probably take you most of the day to get there. And then as you move along to the Spearhead Traverse, would be along probably the best way. It gives you options too. You could actually drop down into the Fitzsimmons drainage to come up a different way. You could actually also go down the Overlord Glacier, which is that right here, and then do options that way. But probably the most option that people do would be to go up around the Fissile, and then wrap yourself around the Overlord Peak, which is right here. And from there, this is a bit of a crux. I could come back to it. This is kind of difficult this time of the year. It's a fairly steep boot pack, which could be affected by melt-freeze crust. If you guys have questions about that, that's been changing a lot, and it's probably getting more and more and more difficult from year to year. Something to think of how difficult that one could be, and that's why you would be going a slightly different way. Dropping down the Fitzsimmons would be one way, which is right here. And then this is Macbeth Glacier, so you actually could bypass this by dropping down the Overlord and dropping down into the Fitzsimmons, or wrapping yourself way around this way and then going back up the Macbeth Glacier, which is right here. That would be one good way to do it if you don't like the boot pack, because there's other crux coming along, which is around this way. This is right now you'd be going on Fitzsimmons Peak, coming through Divolo Glacier, and then there's a south face slope that you need to access to go to the 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧. And south face, and there's another south face on 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧, and that'd be something to think of. To south aspect, you may want to hit those things before 2 o'clock, maybe before 12 even. We're April, May, even going the other way other years, I'd be thinking hard about those two slopes. So the 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧 Ridge is something most people are extremely worried about. That's actually probably the biggest crux who's weather related of the whole trip. It's often a maker or breaker. The other one is the Overlord area right here. But both of those are tricky. One of them is weather, south aspect. The other one is the glacier is changing, and it requires a bit of a rope most of the time around here. So those for me are the two cruxes. And then after that, the next part of the traverse, the next part of traverse I often think of is the hop in between glacier to glacier. You've got Ripsaw right here, and then Naden. You got the platform area. We don't go too much in Shudder and Shatter, but some people have tried it in there. I think it's an interesting feature. There's actually beautiful north-facing slopes in there, and then probably, or once we've got cabin in there, and I think those places will get looked at. So there's actually a few things. Those glaciers are actually changing. They're receding. They're getting smaller. So I suspect 30 years ago, people could move from one glacier to the other without even thinking too hard, or just moving over. Now the Naden ripsaw is becoming quite complex. We made it rope within 5 years, I think, in there. And then you may wrap yourself around hopping glacier to glacier. And I'm moving over northern part of the glacier there, the Traverse. What you should think of when you're there is that there's a lot of north-facing slope, and how are you going to exit this whole area? I can see different things. A lot of people in the past few years have been trying to stay high and crossing the Tremor and to the Troray Glacier. And from Troray, a lot of people have been exiting on the south side of Decker, and that seemed to be a good way to do it. But I would think the other one is to drop down the Tremor. That might be a good, interesting way, all the way down into what is called Wedge Creek, and skinning back up towards the Spearhead Glacier and exiting Blackcomb Glacier. That would save you a lot of hopping from one place to the other. And also, if there's bad weather coming, it actually could actually speed you up and get out of the weather for a while. Place to sleep along the way. I slept in many of those places, but if you do a night, I found a platform a really nice location. I found the Naden a great location. It's an east-facing, fairly smooth glacier. There's a place to hide from bad weather on that platform. There's a big wind scoop in there. You can dig a snow cave or something like that. That's a good spot. Other than that, I think right now with the Blackcomb being closed, that going from Whistler to Blackcomb, that might be the best way, and getting out of the Spearhead via Blackcomb Glacier is a viable option. I think I would say consult the Whistler Blackcomb website for egress of their ski hill there. I think it changed. It seemed to be changing. A lot of people might be going that way. It's something to be look at actually. Okay. Anyway, that's my tidbits on the Spearhead Traverse. If you have any other questions, you can ask later. I've guided it about 15 times and probably done it another 10 to 15 times on my own in the past 30 years or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. As usual, your expertise shines light for all of us. Again, there'll be a question and answer period, folks. So if you want to pick Eric's brain or any of our experts, yeah, please get your questions ready for the end of the show here. So I'm going to move on to our next person. Ollie, how can I see myself here? Or oh, that's what it is. So Eric, there we go. All right, we're back. I can see myself. Awesome. So I'm actually the next contestant here. So what I'm going to be talking about, guys, is light and fast. So, you know, it's very important that, you know, you don't go out on a Spearhead or any Traverse, if possible, with a humongous pack that's going to totally, you know, weigh you down. And there's ways to do that. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let me get my stuff ready here to show you guys. So arguably, the heaviest things that you wouldn't have additional to your normal day would be food and cooking equipment, and of course your sleeping equipment. So I always pack my bag the same way. I like to get my food and or cooking, sleeping stuff in another separate bag that I can remove from my bag and stow it somewhere if I want to do a quick ascent. One of the things I love doing is skiing, and not necessarily with a big heavy pack. So a lot of times on these traverses, you'll have options to boot pack or ski up and get an amazing run and come back to a central location where you've basically emptied your pack of that heavy gear. So how you pack your gear is an important, makes it easier to do that. So for the Spearhead, for myself, I just use, like, this is my Spearhead kind of bag. It's an Arc'teryx 55. And because it has a extendable skirt here at the top, I can stuff this baby. That suffices me for a 3 or 4 day tour. More than ample gear storage in a 55 liter for me anyways. And some people might say, oh, how do you do that? 75 liters is what I use. Well, I'll tell you the secret here. So first things first, one of the things that takes absolutely the most space of all is food. How you pack your food makes a huge difference. I bring only a bit of fresh food, like maybe things that are compressible, like bagels, to last me for the 3 to 4 days that I'm out. Everything else is freeze-dried food. And the optimal system is what I'll show you here. What you're looking for is high caloric, so a food with a lot of calories, that you can, all you need to do is melt water and put that food in a container that's, a double-walled container, an insulated container, and you let the food cook itself in that container. So it's basically rehydrating, warming up, and it's ready to go. If you get into cooking any food or have too much fresh food, you're going to be carrying a lot of extra weight, and it's going to require a lot of extra gas as well. So my first, maybe I'll just talk about, so that's the freeze-dried food. Next thing, get yourself a cup like this. This happens to be like a big Tim Hortons cup. And this cup has enough room to put like a full meal into it. And basically I put my food in here, dump the hot water that I've boiled, basically melted snow. And as soon as the water boils, I turn my stove off and I fill everybody's cups. And I leave this sit for about 2 minutes and I mix it, after a minute. And that's it. My supper is done. And that also keeps your pots nice and clean. There's no need to, whether it's oatmeal or any kind of meal, it's all done in here. And if you prefer, you can also use, of course, the ready-made meals that have bags. And in that case, you cook your meal inside your individual little bag. Now, I personally, for these kind of low elevation traverses, this is my favorite setup right here. A pocket rocket with isobutane propane. As you can see, I fashioned a little hanger so that in case of bad weather, I obviously would not use the hanger, but I can cook right inside my tent with this or inside the vestibule, which makes it a lot easier if the weather is inclement. It's a lot better to cook inside your tent or inside your vestibule. And the way I've fashioned this, I'll show you guys a little closer here. This actually, I have a little slider here that really cinches down really well and holds the pot together. Now, this is the pot. This little piece right here, this is just an MSR. Basically, it's a little plate that you can get from MSR, and it's designed to put on snow so that your stove doesn't melt, the bottom of your stove doesn't melt the snow. And then, this little canister here, this is all I would need. I would take one of these. My partner or partners would carry another one. And that would suffice if you do, if you're conservative with your snow melting, that would suffice for, 2 evenings, no problem. And what I would say is I would always bring an extra emergency isobutane container like this, just in case, you get weathered in or stuck or whatever. And I do like these Snow Peak, and I like the gases that are optimized that are for season. They're kind of optimized, for colder weather. And believe it or not, but all of this, easily fits right into this pot. So this pocket rocket stove fits in there. And as does my spoon, as does this emergency container, and everything fits right there. And then also, what's nice about the isobutane propane, I don't have to worry about, for example, like spilling it anywhere. And I don't have to worry about, you know, a lot of the white gas stoves, they need to be primed. I don't have to worry about that. And so for all those reasons, I definitely prefer it. And once a canister is, you're sure that it's empty, they can also be crushed. Just have to make sure 100% that they're completely empty. So another tip, if you're going to be cooking inside your tent, I would bring a big, large, heavy duty garbage bag, which at the end of your tour, as the days go on, you can use for garbage. But you would spread that if you're cooking inside the tent and you're hanging the stove above your sleeping bags and all that. You put that heavy duty garbage bag down, so basically it traps all the water and any spilled food. Other things that I have in my system to the light and fast approach is I have the lightest and kind of warmest Thermarest. So that one has a kind of a reflective coating. It's very light and it's much less bulky than, even though a Z-Rest or other like foamies, you know, they don't have a chance of a leak, an air leak. They are bulkier, and I like to keep my pack kind of like a bullet, really streamlined. And this can fit inside my pack, no problem. And I just make sure that before I leave for my trip, that there's no holes in it. That's pretty important. And since we're camping on snow, it's highly unlikely that it's going to get a hole. But even if it did, then I could lie my rope down and this on top of it, and it would, you know, provide a good measure of insulation from the snow. And then my sleeping bag, if I use a high quality Thermarest like this, which is, by the way, I only use the half length or the full length. But if you use the half length, remember that you're going to have something for your feet, and the rope and your backpack can be used for your feet if the half length of these is too short for you. And then I personally, this time of the year, I'm a big believer in down because there's nothing warmer. And I'm just very careful to make sure I don't get my sleeping bag, you know, wet or anything like that. And down compact's really small. So this is a -9, which inside a tent, even on a cold night, you know, most days I'd have to strip everything off, or else I'll be too warm with this. Kind of a mummy style sleeping bag. For anything this time of the year, this should be probably more than sufficient. And it's basically a -9. That's what I use. Next thing, you know, having that freeze-dried food, a really light cooking outfit using the isobutane propane, and something like a pocket rocket there, the insulated mug, and also freeze-dried food. You can, and you're sharing your food, you know, with your teammates. Yeah, your food for, you know, 3 or 4 days should not be that heavy, and it should be fairly compact and also very compressible. And here's one more look at that little stove, which doubles as a cup as well if somebody needs it. And yeah, just continuously melting water on this thing and boiling water, and that's all you're doing. Next thing is a light harness, of course, you know, the new kind of ski touring style harnesses. And I am a big fan of technology. And so one of the things I love is this new setup by Petzl, which is the Rad Kit, you know, and hats off to them. They put in the technology, the engineering to make this amazing rope. This is a 30-meter rope. The absolute safest and lightest system for the Spearhead, say, especially for a group of like 2 or more, is having 2 of these ropes. So you have 2 30-meter ropes. That way, just, you know, if there is a crevasse involvement and it's good weather, more than likely we wouldn't be traveling with the rope downhill. And if we are traveling with rope, well, that's not a problem. But more than likely, if you can understand what I'm saying, is that if there is a crevasse involvement, it would be an unroped victim. If you have an unroped victim, well, you're just hoping that the person with the rope is not the person that fell in. So having 2 30-meter sections of this rope makes all the difference, because then there's backup. And by the way, like Matt said, you know, our snowpack is very generous here on the coast. And, you know, crevasse involvements, I'm not going to say they're definitely absolutely possible, but they're fairly rare on a spearhead because of the amount of snow. But like Eric Visso said, you know, the glaciers are starting to recede, and why that is problematic because as they recede, there's big cracks also opening up, which don't necessarily get bridged as much as they used to because, you know, climate change. And the rest of my, this is actually my Crevasse Rescue kit. It's super compressible, and there's even an emergency harness in here. And one of the nice things about using a rad line, which is only 6 millimeters, I'll pull a little bit of out here. It kind of looks like dental floss, you know. It's pretty amazing technology. But is that your prussics are smaller. These are 5 millimeter prussics. So again, it makes your whole Crevasse Rescue kit much smaller. And also, of course, an important part of the rad kit is this amazing micro traction, it's called. And this is a ratcheting pulley that reduces the friction to a point where basically, without getting too complicated, where we used to need a lot more rope in the past to do what's called a drop loop, we can now do a direct haul with something like this and gain almost the same kind of advantage as we would with a drop loop, which means that, you know, we basically need half the rope that we used to. And so that's amazing. In other words, 2 30-meter sections of the rad line is like the perfect setup. And if you guys want to learn about Crevasse Rescue, it's something that, you know, we do at Mount Skills Academy and Adventures. And if you take a course with us in preparation for the Spearhead, again, we'll donate, you know, part of the proceeds to the Spearhead Hut Society and POW. And then a few other things. All the group equipment you should share so that not one person carries it. So I would, you know, I get first dibs on the poles. I like to carry ski poles because they're very compressible. So I always try to get the ski poles. 1 or 2 people maximum need a first aid kit. Make sure you have blister. Make sure it's a good first aid kit though. And another thing that can be shared amongst the team is kind of like an emergency repair kit. Mine here I'll show you what mine has. It has some bits and pieces for Dynafit bindings, but it has a lighter, spare batteries for transceivers, that kind of thing. And this is a nice little thing here that you guys should have. This is a piece of bike inner tube. If things get a little rough out there, this is the perfect fire starter. You can go down to tree line, below tree line, you know, find yourself or build a shelter, find yourself some dry wood, and you can probably start a fire with this if you do a good job of finding dry wood. Other things in my repair kit are lighters, spare batteries, tie wraps in here. I've got a bunch of tie wraps. And one of the most important things in any repair kit is baling wire. This is kind of flexible steel wire. So I've had guests break the pins on their Dynafit bindings, for example. Well, I think actually it wasn't Dynafit, it was another brand actually. So I'll take that back, on another brand. Basically it didn't break, it unscrewed and fell off. So you might want to put Loctite if your binding company brand, you know, has a screw in, you know, Dynafit inserts. But with this and duct tape and a ski strap, I was able to pretty much cement that boot into place. And Buddy skied down, you know, hundreds of meters of vertical all the way back. This was a hut-based trip that this occurred without a problem. So it's important to have that. And of course, another thing is, I don't have it here. Where is it? It's a screwdriver. You need a screwdriver with different heads. Very important tool. And some kind of pliers are quite useful, like a multi-tool. And that's it. Other items in my kit, I'll carry some kind of little charger for my cell phone. And I really love the idea of having communication. So I'll have a radio as a guide, but everybody can get one of these, an ELT. This particular one is inReach. There's many different kinds. But again, if you need a rescue or something like that, this is a game changer for your personal safety. And the final thing that I would recommend is to think about, as the season progresses, is ski crampons. You know, if we get strong melt freeze cycles sooner than later, as some of you may know, you can't travel without these on a traverse, because basically what happens is either because of ambient temperature or especially on the south aspects, the snow will melt during the day and freeze solid at night, and just can't ascend those slopes even with skins on your skis. And so that's where, you know, these ski crampons come in. So that's how I get my light and fast pack. It's all about the food, a proper cooking system, not a huge sleeping bag, and you know, a light sleeping bag and a light bedding, like a high quality thermarest, and that's it. You'll be on your way. The only addition I might do if I do a more technical traverse is an ice axe. And maybe one point that I'd like to make for personal comfort, on a 3-day traverse, honestly, I would bring like 1 to 2 pair change of socks. That's it. And 1 to 2 change of underwears. That's it. And in terms of like personal comfort, toothpaste, deodorant. I say deodorant because it is nice for your teammates, because after a while, you know, you can imagine the smell there if you're sharing a tent with a partner. Toilet paper, of course, is quite useful. Sunscreen, something very, very important to have in your pack this time of the year is glop stopper. This is like something that you spread onto your skis, on your skin, so they don't get, basically makes them water repellent, so that snow doesn't glop onto them. One of the personal comforts I love that's very light is I'll bring wet ones in a Ziploc bag. And that's kind of like my shower, my personal shower, you know, that I'll shower at the end of the day using wet ones, very light. And maybe one last tip that I was going to tell you guys, as the days go on, your inner boots might get moist, and also your boot, basically your boot liner and footbeds. And so the best way that I know to keep those dry is at night, you basically rest those on your chest inside your sleeping bag and dry them out. And then in the morning, you have nice warm booties to put on. And more importantly, they're dry. So that's my take on the fast and light technique. And if you guys have any questions, you can ask me some at the end of the show here. Cool. So that's it for me. So next up, last but not least, I'm very stoked to introduce the venerable Callum Pettit. And Callum is going to share his stoke for the Spearhead, and he's going to talk about his journey towards becoming a pro skier. And, you know, one thing I'd like to highlight is how I personally think that Callum is not just a pro, but a real up-and-coming role model that a lot of people will be able to relate to. Just, I love his mindset. So without further ado, welcome Callum.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I am stoked to be here and stoked to live in this area, and was fortunate enough to grow up here, which helped kind of shape the skier who I am. And I spent a lot of time over every year since I was 9 when I moved here on the mountain, and yeah, slowly got into the backcountry through friends and mentors. And yeah, basically the outdoors is an amazing place to recreate and be in the mountains. And I think it's important for people to get outside and get exercise, and skiing and snowboarding is such a great tool to have fun and live a healthy lifestyle. So I definitely like to promote, the outdoors. And I've traveled all over BC and the world to ski, and do a lot of different backcountry access around Whistler and Pemberton, my home. But like we said, the access of just riding lifts is so special because it takes away more machines from you, and it's just kind of your body, and you're just using the lifts to take you up mountains. So the sweet thing about the Spearhead is you can also get some laps just on the resort and kind of crush a lot of vert using lifts, and then kind of go for an afternoon tour. There's a lot of options, like depending on the day, where you can utilize the lifts or get away from the crowds and go out into the backcountry. And yeah, I guess another thing I can talk about is pushing yourself and risk management. You see a lot of pro athletes, like all they post is like some of their most crazy riding, but when the cameras aren't, when we're not filming, we're like, we want to do nice, long, mellow runs, and we're not getting gnarly every day and trying to send it. But yeah, and I think as you get older, you don't want to kind of put your body on the line every day. So picking those right days to go for it is really important. Make sure everything's, you know, where you're going. A lot of things help if you're skiing line is taking a photo at the bottom and making sure you know exactly where you want to go. You really got to like be communicative with your friends, which is a huge thing. You should always have radios and make it clear what your objectives are with your friends, and take your time. You don't need to rush, and try and beat someone if it's gonna like get you the powder like one track less. So I think yeah, you just gotta, the more you get older, the more you like kind of calm down in the backcountry and start to rush less. And you know, you don't want to try and bite off more than you can chew, because you want to be there the next day. And yeah, it's a long season, so you don't want to make silly mistakes. And we want to, and it's a good thing to do is take courses, avalanche courses. Make sure you trust who you go out in the backcountry with, which is a huge thing. If someone is in your group that is making bad decisions, like call them out and like have a conversation. Make sure you're all on the same page, because yeah, communication is key in the backcountry. And the more you do it, the more you experience. So it's a learning process, but it's an amazing thing to share with friends, and yeah, set goals and for the weekend or whenever you come, because it's a beautiful place to recreate. I guess what another thing I can say is respect and share the mountains with fellow groups, and clean up after yourself. But yeah, I think I'm very fortunate that I've been able to spend a lot of time in the mountains, and I want to try and share my experience with others, and yeah, promote a safe and fun environment. What else?
Yeah, thanks, Callum. You know, one of the things that I found really interesting in talking to you is, you know, I mean, I've seen some of your videos, some of the stuff you've done. Obviously, you're extremely talented. You come from a family of pro skiers. You know, I guess the way you want to define your brand, one thing that struck me, and maybe you could speak a little bit about like to that, is you wanted to be someone who others could relate to.
Yeah, so I think as far as what I want to influence people for what I do in the mountain is not like, you don't need to do, it's not about like showing off all the time. I think when the cameras come out, you want to push yourself and kind of show your friends and like what you're capable of. And it is fun to learn things and push yourself. But the older I get, I also want to just kind of share the feeling and have more of a like yeah, relate, basically make people smile and want to be outside and go ski. Because I think I know when I watch other sports, like if something's too difficult to attain, you're like, wow, that's crazy, but it doesn't make you really want to go do it. But if you watch something that you like see yourself doing, then you want to go experience that. And I mean, also if you see someone do a really cool line or trick, that also inspires you to go push yourself on your level. But you definitely want to just kind of slowly progress. And some people progress really fast, but I like to like not try and fall a lot, because when you're younger and you start sending stuff, you start to realize that the risks are greater than the reward sometimes when you're launching off huge cliffs. Sometimes it's just better to get the nice turns. And yeah, I think this is my approach.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I see a parallel with guiding. I did all kinds of different guiding and also personal endeavors, and I find that you learn to temper your enthusiasm with logic. And if you have your friends to back you up, that really helps. And the spearhead is no joke, right? If you get stuck in some of those cruxes that Eric Visso was talking about in bad weather, you better know how to navigate. If somebody falls in a crevasse, you better know how to extricate yourself from a crevasse. If the snowpack, say in the afternoon, is tricky because of daytime warming, you might be stuck not being able to go down because you got to wait until it freezes, maybe until the next morning, until it's safe to boot pack down or something. So yeah, I think that's good advice. Thanks so much, Callum. We're stoked to have you.
Yeah.
So guys, we're gonna get into a bunch of questions here. I have just to clarify. I think I may have had said ski poles. What I meant was tent poles. I like carrying the tent poles rather than the tent. That's what I meant by first dibs on tent poles. So some of the questions I have here is, what do you do for water? One bottle or two 500 milliliters bottles? How about who would like to take that question?
I'll take that.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
All right, I'll take that one. I was just thinking hard on that one. A roll-up bottle from Nalgene is really good. I really like that one. And you can have a half-liter roll-up as well. So you can often I've got a half-liter platypus I can put in my pocket, and a full 1 liter roll-up Nalgene bottle I found for water bottle. And I've got a 400 ml coffee mug who's insulated, and I can keep coffee the whole day. That's my water thing. That's good?
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. Another question we have here, it's like I can answer this one. It's quite a few different people have asked that, is about the access to the spearhead. So yeah, I can state that I have heard from Blackcomb that there's no uphill access from either Whistler or Blackcomb. That's what I've heard, and you can refer to their website about egress from the spearhead. I know for sure that like you can like the Blackcomb Glacier is a provincial park, and there's several ways to get to the Blackcomb Glacier. And so what I would recommend is exactly what Eric recommended, and what we're going to do with our clients this year mostly is we're going to go up Singing Pass, and we're going to do some variations there to save some time, and then exit Blackcomb through either like Corona, Sumi, or from North Call down Blackcomb Glacier to gain that provincial park. And one of the advantages, actually, that at this time of the year about doing the spearhead that way is that you're seeing a lot of north faces. And, the snow hasn't quite had that melt freeze yet. That sometimes, you hit that corn snow just perfectly. So I would say that could be, one of the good points. So just start earlier and do the original access. through Singing Pass and work your way up to where the old hut was, and be on your way. That's what I'd recommend. Okay, so another question here. We got a big thank you to Matt there for the Spearhead Atlas. What else here do we got?
We should read some to you, Eric?
Yeah, sure.
If I dry my booties in my sleeping bag, my down sleeping bag always ends up soaked. What's your trick to avoid that?
Okay, so I guess that was a question because I mentioned that, so I guess I'll take that one. So it sounds to me like you have extremely sweaty feet. So if you have sweaty feet, the best thing to do probably for you is to buy a pair of vapor barrier socks. And your feet will, because your feet are going to get wet anyways. But what the vapor barrier socks will do is you can wear really thin socks, bring maybe 1 or 2 changes of socks. What you do throughout the day, you take the vapor barrier sock out, you switch the socks, and you dry the vapor barrier just on your pants or something, or let it dry in the air, and then put it back on, and your booty remains fairly dry. For somebody like me who doesn't sweat as much, what I do is as soon as I get in the tent, I remove my footbed from the boot, I separate it, and I leave that boot to start drying outside of my sleeping bag. And because most of the boot is, not really that water absorbent, it's just a liner that's on the boot, you can wipe the water, you can just wipe the water off with a little cloth or something like that. Some people go as far as removing that little liner that's on top of the foam, which itself is hydrophobic. Some people remove sweat so much, they just remove all of that inner liner so that it cannot absorb any water. And what they do again is the same thing, is that they basically bring a little cloth and a spare socks, and they dry the inner boot every once in a while and put their feet back in, especially on really hot days. So hopefully that answers your question. What else we got going on here?
10 suggestions.
Yeah, anybody want to take a tent suggestion? Question? Matt.
This might not come across as the best info, but I'll tell you what tent I'm looking to buy once they're in stock. There's an MSR tent, I think it's called the Access. Is that the right one? Anyway, there's the MSR tent that's called the Access. I think there's a 2 and 3 person, and they're around 5 pounds. And they are double wall tents with very little netting and pretty generous vestibules for on each side. So I've been using a single wall for quite a few years, and it's not my favorite. So I think I'm going to go with that. So that's what I'm going to go with next. But you probably want to hear somebody say, I'm using X, and I like that. So I'll turn it over to somebody else to give that information.
Eric, any thoughts?
Past couple of days, I've used that same Access, and we used a 2 person, 2 people in there, tight. We thought about the 3 person or 2 people was fine. So I was working with one guide, and we were thinking about it, and then the 1 person when you're alone, and if you can split it to 3 person. 2 person is good for a couple.
But is it a pretty decent tent? Other than like if you get the 3 person for 2, would you say that's pretty good?
Eric,
What was that?
it's yours. I'm all done.
All right, so another
Eric, you're
question.
muted.
Okay, so another question here. I have here from Annie. What kind of experience do you need to do the Spearhead Traverse? Maybe that's another one, a good one for Matt. I mean, you've seen so much of that terrain. What do you think is the minimum experience that you would need, Matt? I think you're muted, Matt. There you go.
How's that? You got me? Okay. So I guess like first off, I feel like personally, if I was like thinking of my kids growing up and going off to do it, I would want them to have gone through an AST 1 and 2 probably. Like I don't feel like an AST 1 is like, I think that's the introduction, and then you really want to go for that AST 2 to have a more comprehensive knowledge. I would really think you would want to have done a glacier travel or a crevasse rescue course. I feel like that would be critical background. And then I feel like you'd want to have done like a good amount of time, like a season of like touring around and putting those skills into practice, in glaciated terrain. And I probably would want to have done some overnight trips, not in a distant part, like go to Elfin Lakes and set up, or Red Heather and set up a tent and do some winter camping. I would say those would be a bunch of precursors that I would like want somebody to have before they did something a bit more remote. And then I would probably, I think you should probably like get to know the terrain in the because Blackcomb's a great place to go touring for a couple of days. Like you could tour out as a day trip, a good chunk and back, and get familiar with that kind of like, maybe go out to Pattison and, or even, maybe like go ski on the Tremor Glacier a bit to get familiar with that out and back section, and maybe do some skiing, like go out and ski Whirlwind, or even go to the Overlord Glacier, and just so you're familiar with both ends. I feel like if you kind of put all those pieces together and like had a season or two of like, getting after it on some glaciated terrain, that might put you in a good stead. I don't know. What do some of the other people think?
Yeah, I would echo your thoughts, Matt. I think having AST2, if you're going to be leading like a trip, I think is important, and for the other participants as well. It's kind of the course that really brings everything together in terms of avalanche knowledge. You made a great point about Whistler, Blackcomb. One of the great things is it's easy to get out and understand and get to know the front range of the spearheads, so that if you're stuck needing to come out or something, you're familiar with the exits and the approaches as well. I think that's a great point. Crevasse Rescue, of course, is an important skill set. And I'd say the last thing basically is navigation. If you know how to navigate, I find that the Spearhead, as compared to say other classic traverses like the 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝𝙚 Traverse, is a little more complex in some ways. There's a couple, cruxes there, little calls that Eric V was talking about that really, you need to, know how to navigate. It's not super complex, but complex enough that you'd want to know how to navigate in a whiteout. So yeah, I'd echo those thoughts. Do you agree with that, Eric V?
Yeah, there's like, there's all sort of difficulty to do on that trip. So it's like those for me, those south face slope on 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝𝙚 is where people struggle all the time. It's kind of a make it or not make it trip. If you can't make it there, you might as well ski out. Basically, you get to ski down the Macbeth Glacier, down to Fitzsimmons, and you work your way towards the cabin on the Overlord. That's kind of the way to do it. Get your map and have a little trick. Actually, you can go out back up Overlord. That's probably the safest way out of the trip if you can't make it around there. For me, that's. By the way, actually, I was thinking of something. There's actually water you can access up high on the glacier right now on the Naden. There's actually a south face access. For me, I was thinking about it a few minutes ago. There's actually in between Naden and Repsol, there's actually a south slope, and which is difficult to travel to. And I've filled up water bottles in there easily on a sunny day. So if you do it in a day from Blackcomb, let's say, there's water there by 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock on that south aspect, Repsol to Naden. It's a difficult, tricky spot, but there's water there flowing from the snow.
Nice. Yeah, it sure is nice to know these little secret things.
Yeah.
Thanks, Eric, Matt. Here's another question. This one is for Callum. This one is from Connor. Do you feel pressure to perform as a pro? What do you think, Callum?
One second. Yeah.
All right. Callum's just getting set up again here.
Oh,
Just 1 second.
There we
Me-
go. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, the question was from Connor here. Do you feel pressure to perform as a pro?
Yeah, I definitely felt more pressure like the first bunch of years of me filming for video segments. Just when the kind of cameras are on, and there's a lot of people that spend a lot of time to like get to set up cameras and get where you are, and so you definitely want to like make sure you lay your line down. But as I've been definitely just learning more to not get pressured by like cameramen, because a lot of times they can pressure you, be like, yeah, go do that, it's good, and you kind of look at it, you're like, well, it actually doesn't look that good to me. So you got to just pick your battles, and just be super confident in what you do try and accomplish. Yeah, kind of just got to trust your own instinct and don't get peer pressured by people who aren't doing it and they're not you. So yeah, just listen to your gut when it comes to making decisions. But it's also, the longer you do study something, the more you kind of figure it out and where it does become possible. So the more like places you look at a feature from like different places, you kind of helps to get different vantage points, and you're like, oh, well, actually that does look doable there, or you find out that doesn't look doable where you thought it did look doable for one section. So you gotta really analyze the terrain and make sure you have a game plan.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Callum. Another question here is, this one is from Catherine. What is a rescue like if something goes wrong? Yeah, that's a good question. I could probably answer that one. So in BC, it's basically free to get helicopter rescue. You call 911 if possible, or trigger your inReach, or you have a radio, or sometimes there's lots of guides out. You hail a guide and say, hey, I need help. But if you need a rescue in a Spearhead, it's quite isolated. And, like a lot of guides will carry what is called like an improvised rescue sled. So you can basically create like a little sled that can haul somebody with. But, the prospect of doing that over a long distance, I think it would be extremely a lot of effort. And so the best thing is probably to stabilize the person. That's where some first aid kit skills are important, and hopefully have the weather for a helicopter. Keep in mind that, helicopters, the lower in elevation that you are, the easier it is for a helicopter to pick you up. And also they need like a flat landing. You can't be picking up from a steep slope or something like that. So oftentimes you'd have to move the person to somewhere flat or dig out a platform for the helicopter to land. And so that is a reality of, doing anything in the backcountry, is you have to have those skills and a plan, for planning for the worst case scenario. And the helicopters, one of the nice things about the inReach is when you send an SOS signal, it also provides your location for you. So if, and the other way, of course, is a map. And on a map, if you have some way of communicating either with a sat phone or a radio, or you can tell somebody with a radio, you give them your NAD, your this is something you would learn in a navigation course. It's another thing that we teach at Mountain Skills Academy. But yeah, you can basically give them your grid reference, and that's what the pilot would use to figure out where to pick you up. Yeah, and that's about it. You know, hopefully that's one of the reasons also to make sure you have the right skills and to be conservative, especially if the conditions are tougher. You know, if the snow is heavy, you might not rip down as fast as you might, and especially with a heavy pack as well, that kind of thing. So those are things to keep in mind, that, you know, rescue could take a while. I hope that answers your question, Connor. Do you have other questions for us, Ollie?
Yeah, I was looking at that, and I'm actually thinking about sharing my screen here. Give me 10 seconds here. I think you're gonna see my screen. Couple plays that I really like. Do I have the right spot? No, it's not even in there. So a couple plays, if you have a map. I like the rocks on the Macbeth Glacier. There's a nice flat spot. It's not too far from when you want to put the new cabin. Another spot is the call above that between Macbeth and Naden. That works well. The middle of Naden Glacier works well. The call at the top of Naden, who's staring down into the Curtin Glacier, that works well too. I know some friends would like to keep there. Again, there's water on the Naden, so if you camp near that face, you might have access to water at the end of the day. If you arrive there, so you may just have like a 5-minute walk to some fresh water. No melting required. The platform I slept on many times. I slept on the Tremor Glacier. That works well. I like those when it's, you know, when you expect weather, if it's wider, often it's less windy than calls. So place near call, near pinch from south to north, they tend to get windy when there's weather coming in. So if you're expecting weather, a call may not be a good idea. Down the glacier is probably a bit better. Those are the options. It's kind of what I'm thinking of usually. Calls when they expect good weather, but if there's bad weather, stay away from those places. They get windy really quick. I see a big yes from Matt there. Place to hide. I slept on 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝𝙚 Glacier. I thought it was for the first few years because it's hard to exit if the weather comes in. But if you're expecting good weather, there's good skiing there. There's some fast peak to do, and you can spend 2 nights there if you're expecting good weather. There's a lot of skiing to be done there. I kind of like that.
It'd be hard to ski out the 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝𝙚 Glacier there, hey, off of Benvolio.
Sorry, what did you say again, Matt?
Oh, I was saying that it would be really hard to ski out the 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝𝙚 Glacier off of Benvolio. I feel like you could stack lines there all day from one side to the other.
Yeah.
There's a lot of terrain.
Ollie, you want to ask the next question? They can hear you, right?
No, not really. No. Just repeat that person's question, Evans. Try to spearhead in a day.
Okay, yeah, so we have another question. Maybe that's a good one for Matt. Matt, there's somebody is asking, can you give us a little info about doing a spearhead in a day?
Yeah, sure. Let's see here. You know, like unless you're really strong, and there certainly are lots of people out there that are, But I'd probably wait till the lift system was running. Like that'd be a great next year kind of thing when you can ride the lifts. I've done it both ways as a day trip, and it's easier to do it from Blackcomb. If you're going to be exiting out Singing Pass Trail, that's a less elevation gain. I think a tip I would say is if you're doing it on a day where you think you'll be able to chill for a little bit, like in the spring, which is kind of the good time to do it. It's really nice to take a small stove like Eric was showing, which he was talking about using for his multi-day trip. But I have a reactor, an MSAA reactor, which is a very similar stove. It's like a water melting machine. And I often just take a liter of water and that reactor stove in a group. And that reactor stove can just, with a very small fuel can, you can pump out liter after water. So you can only carry 1 liter, and then everybody gets as much water as they want all day. So that's a way to keep the weight down. Yeah, what about tips? Like I would say if I was trying to get ready to do the Spearhead in a day, I would certainly wait for like a bomber high pressure system. Like I wouldn't bother going if it looked like there is chance of inclement weather coming in. It's such a beautiful thing to do, and you want to be comfortable and relaxed and not be fighting through clouds and worrying about navigation. So wait for that super high pressure system with a good Avi day. If it's going to be warm, as Eric V was pointing out, like you get to that back end above the 𝙎𝙤𝙤𝙧𝙝𝙚 South aspect, and if you're doing that full traverse, you're at the top of that line. You're kind of committing. You can backtrack, but you're basically committing to that slope. And if it's a hot day and it's been getting solar input onto that slope, that could be quite that's quite a potential hazardous place there. So you'd want to not dawdle and be aware that heat could be a problem if you're later in the day, if it's a particularly hot day. There was another thing that came to mind. I don't know. I'm sure lots of other people have good tips. Oh, I know. My other tip is I would like look at the elevation gain and distance, and I would do days that are similar in terms of elevation and distance ahead of time. So I'd go into the Blackcomb backcountry and go, okay, I'm going to make sure I travel, 30 kilometers and gain 1,700 meters of elevation by mapping out some route and knowing that I could physically do that, so you don't get to the back end and pooch out and like lose energy and not be able to finish. And you can easily make like that trip I showed of linking up a bunch of stuff in the Blackcomb. You could do a whole bunch of different stuff. Doesn't have to be shoots. There's all kinds of long runs you can link up and get a similar day in terms of distance and elevation. So you could test yourself out close to the resort, and if things go wrong, you can just boot out to body bag or one of the easier exits. But do a test run of your systems and carry what you think you're going to be carrying, and see if you've got the capacity energy wise to do that, so you don't get yourself into trouble at the back end.
Awesome. So I hope that answers that question. And well, we're going to wrap it up soon, guys. So, but we'd like to take any remaining questions. And it's interesting at these Zoom meetings. One thing that I've realized over time is that, all of a sudden the question period kind of ends, and but there's a lot of questions left, and it just takes that one person to ask a question. So don't be shy. What I'd like to say is that maybe if you have a question, why don't you unmute yourself and go ahead and ask a question, and we'll do our best to answer it. How about that? Is anybody willing to be brave enough to unmute themselves and ask us a question? Or if you have something to say, go ahead. All right, guys. Well, it looks like that's it. So we thank you guys. This was a tough go during COVID, and especially, with the shutdown and the pandemic and all that. But I'm really happy that, I had this amazing support from these great experts. So thank you very much, Matt. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Callum and Eric Visso. And I'd like to give a shout out to Ollie from Mountain Skills Academy for facilitating the technological aspect of it here. And hopefully next year we have no more of this COVID stuff. and the lifts are running also, and we can provide you guys with a really cool event, and with the same goal to highlight the Spearhead, get the Stoke going, and also do a fundraiser for important community things such as the Spearhead huts and POW, protect our winters there. And so that'll be goodbye for me. And thank you, Matt, Callum, and Eric, and Ollie. And I wish everybody a safe spring ski mountaineering season. And yeah, have a great time, everyone. Take care. Bye now.
Thank you. Maybe we should have a music fest on the Spearhead after.